As Robin mentioned, my name is Sydney Meimann. I am the program director for our financial literacy program here at UC. I am housed out of our one-stop student service center virtually for right now, but our office is available to help answer questions or touch base on any of the topics I'm going to talk about today. So if you find yourself, I know we're short on time today and we want to stick with the schedule, but feel free to throw questions in the chat and I'll do my best at the end to address all of those, or we can connect one-on-one after our time together today. So let's go ahead and jump in. So just a quick overview of what we're going to talk about, just so you kind of know what to expect. I'm going to go over different types of graduate financial aid, so what you can expect as a graduate student to be eligible for, how to go about securing funding. This is a little bit more kind of research-based, job opportunity, that sort of thing. A little bit, and as Robin mentioned, how costly graduate school, especially in health professions, can be. Just a little bit about the importance of financial literacy, some overall tips on how to make all this work, and then just some kind of next steps and takeaways as you guys move into this next part of your educational journey. Okay, so getting into the nitty-gritty about graduate financial aid types. So just going to do a quick rundown of all the different kinds. These are kind of in order of how we would want you to take them, if that makes sense. So all the things listed here at the top are, the first four options are free money, essentially. It's not money that has to be repaid. It's money that you've earned from one way or another. We're going to also run through payment plans and what that looks like, as well as loans, student loans. So the first thing, grants and fellowships. So this really depends on your area of study, but just kind of a brief overview. These are award funds that are awarded to students based on researching or funds to support your research. So it could include a variety of things. It could be a stipend, which is basically money that's paid to you for your monthly expenses, kind of like a paycheck. It could cover any travel expenses. So if there's travel in the world after COVID, I suppose, but any travel expenses related to your research, it could cover that. Some of them do cover room and board and or tuition remission. And tuition remission is basically where they're covering the cost of your tuition related expenses. So it really kind of depends. All of these are, and I'm going to talk a little bit about where to find grants and fellowships as graduate students here in just a second. But this really depends on the organization that's awarding those funds. So you really want to make sure before you apply for something and you agree to take on a fellowship to really outline what the expectations are from you, and then also what you can expect from the entity that's giving you these funds, so you know exactly what's going to be covered. This does trip a lot of students up because those questions aren't clearly answered when they begin. So you really want to make sure that you know exactly what's going to be covered and before you jump into all of that. Scholarships are a little bit different. These are generally merit-based funds, meaning that you would achieve the funds based on grades, other academics, maybe you're writing an essay or some other kind of academic profile or application that you're submitting for that scholarship. They're generally like a one-time thing. So it could be a dollar amount maybe that's split for this academic year, or maybe just for one semester. It's a little bit different from a grant or a fellowship. Generally, it's you've done all the work on the front end and that money is awarded to you kind of like a reward for all the hard work that you've put in. You could have these coming from the institution or private scholarships. So institutional funds would be something that University of Cincinnati's medical school might provide to you. So that would be funds that are awarded to you. It goes towards your student bill at the university, and it's coming from an institutional fund at UC. Whereas a private, or whatever university you decide to attend, a private scholarship, those are coming from community organizations, and there are ones that are available for graduate students. I know generally speaking, a lot of people tend to think that undergrads are really the ones getting all the money as far as these small scholarships go, but many outside entities, churches, other religious institutions, community leaders, places like P&G and different banks and things like that will make scholarships available. They may only have a handful, but many don't specify that you must be an undergrad or a graduate student. So they will have rules and guidelines put in place that you'll need to meet, like I said, that might be an essay or GPA, something like that, but absolutely apply. And we're going to talk about how you can go about finding those on the next slide, but just, to know that all of those options are available to you as a graduate student. Graduate assistantships, this is another unique option. It's very similar to student employment or just, kind of a general job. Basically what it is it's funds that are awarded to you, again, kind of similar to a fellowship, but it's awarded based on work. So this could be awarded to you by, general university funds or by your specific program. And generally it's going to provide a stipend, kind of like a paycheck. And a scholarship toward tuition expenses. So again, this kind of goes back to what we talked about with a fellowship or a grant for research. It really depends on the organization that's providing it. So you'll just want to make sure that that part is clear when you go into it. But really to know that this doesn't necessarily have to be related to your research. So I always use this example. So the McNair Scholarship Program for undergraduate students at UC has a graduate assistant that supports that program. So this is not specific to that student's research. The student can be, as far as I understand, from any academic background, but basically the student is essentially working for that scholarship program, providing support to the director and in whatever role that looks like. And then they're essentially getting, a scholarship and a stipend that portion goes to their education. And then the rest is basically funds that are paid like a paycheck. So again, there's a lot of opportunities for things like that. And we're going to dive in a little bit more about work study, but you can find graduate assistant positions at UC as well as federal work study on the jobs.uc.edu website. Just make sure that you're searching there by student related positions, and take a look at what might be out there for research and things like that. Things do look a little bit different right now with everything related to COVID, but if it's another year or two, by the time you're looking to do these things as a graduate student, you may see some other opportunities out there. So again, work, I know it's incredibly difficult as a graduate student, especially in the health professions fields. But if it's possible to work while you're in school, definitely take advantage of what might be out there, especially some that are UC or wherever you decide to attend positions at your university, because the individuals and staff people and faculty that you might work for at the university really understand that your education comes first and this job to them is second. That I think is unique about working in a position at a university. The nice thing too with being an urban institution, we have a lot of opportunities close by. So even if you're not finding something that fits your interest at the university, we've got a lot of places close by. So if you can manage to work, maybe that gives you some flexibility to work evenings and weekends, stuff like that around your class schedule. Definitely take advantage of that. Federal work study does require that you file a FAFSA, but you do not have to have federal work study to get a student worker job. So let me run through what that looks like. So federal work study money is awarded based on financial need, and that's determined by the information provided on your FAFSA. There are positions though at the university and even some, like I said, in the community that don't require that you have this federal work study money in order to be employed. So if you've got questions about that, or if you are an undergraduate student who has federal work study, so yes, I just got a question about where can students find work study positions. The jobs.uc.edu that's listed there, that's the best place to look for any of those types of positions. So when you get in there, you'll see you can search by student. It'll show you which ones require federal work study and which ones don't. So that would be the best place to start to take a look at what might be out there. Another piece on federal work study, if you're an undergrad that's used federal work study or you have that available to you, you don't just have to work at UC. There are some community organizations, nonprofits, places like that you can use as federal work study funds. So just keep that in mind and we can help get you connected and get those questions answered one-on-one if you want to take a look at that. But just to keep in mind that you're not limited just to the university if you've got those work study funds. Okay, so a couple other things I want to dive into. So those are all money that you've earned, don't have to be repaid, basically grants, scholarships, assistantships, and working. Separate from that, if you are working and maybe you still have a little bit of money that you've got to pay for your bill, or maybe it's a lot of it, you could take a look at a university payment plan toward getting the cost covered. So just looking at whether that's UC or another school, looking at the university payment plan that you might have available to you. We offer one at UC that's basically a 3-month payment plan. Instead of having to pay everything at the beginning of the term, you get basically 3 payments throughout the semester to get that balance covered. So that can really be helpful for people, especially if you're working and paying as you go. And the last piece that I know everybody wants to talk about is student loans. So once you've gone through, yes, absolutely. I hope you guys saw that in the chat about getting support, financially and connecting with those faculty members while you're in school, because those could be your biggest champions and advocates for you. You build those connections, and those are the ways you're going to find out about opportunities. So meet your instructors, stay connected to them, ask what else you can do to help, ask how else you can get involved, because all those things are going to make that person think of you when there is an opportunity. So definitely take a look. So like I said, kind of when you've exhausted everything else, that's when you would want to look at loans. So there are essentially 2 types. There's federal loans that come from the Department of Education. You must file a FAFSA in order to be eligible for those. And then there's private loans. Those would be through a bank or a credit union. We're going to dive deeper on a couple different areas in just a little bit, but just to kind of give you a high level overview about loans, that they're private or federal is the big thing for right now. Okay, so kind of switching gears a little bit to talk a little bit about scholarships and tips. I know we talked a lot about jobs, but here's some other places on where you can find some of those scholarships out in the community and online. So the University of Illinois has a fellowship finder that is stellar. If you guys want to take a look at that, and I can drop the link in once I wrap up in the chat so you guys can see that. But it is a fantastic opportunity that's not just opportunities at University of Illinois, but it's a great place to find fellowships. You can sort by your areas of interest. It's an excellent tool for that. There is a scholarship search tool inside of Catalyst. So if you want to take a look in there, when you log in, you'll see that as an option. And those scholarships, are legitimate. They've been vetted. Those are available to you. FastWeb is another resource that is legitimate, and as well as Scholarship America. So those are a couple of those that you might find. Just general scholarships, like I said, more a one-time thing, whereas that fellowship finder can help you find things that are more long-term based on research. Libraries have a lot of good information, hometown organizations, churches. Take a look if you're already working, especially as an undergrad. You may have some employee reimbursement. There might be a scholarship opportunity through your employer. So even if you're working somewhere part-time, definitely take advantage of that. And you might have something through your parents. So even as a graduate student, like I said, some of those private organizations really don't distinguish the need for a student to be an undergrad versus a graduate student. So you could definitely take a look, see if those opportunities are out there. And the biggest tip that I can drive home is, well, 2 things. Number one, don't ever pay for a scholarship search. There are some searches out there that will say, hey, this is $19.99 to buy this. Don't do that. Don't pay for scholarship searches. Check with our office if you need help or if you get stuck somewhere, but absolutely utilize the scholarship resources that are available to you. And number 2 is to take your time. So these scholarship applications, I always tell students to treat applying for scholarships like a part-time job. Set yourself aside, I'm going to spend 2 hours this week, 30 minutes each night or something like that, or an hour on Saturday to just research scholarships and write these essays, make sure that they look good, make sure my resume looks good, and definitely take advantage of the resources at UC. So and I just put General University Writing Center, because even if you're not planning to stay with UC, you may have some other resources at another university. But at UC, the Learning Commons, the Academic Writing Center, the Bearcat Career Studio, they can help with resume help. So definitely take advantage of those resources at UC to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward, because this is all that scholarship organization knows about you. They don't know all the things that you're not telling them. So make sure that you make the best case for yourself on why you deserve that scholarship over everybody else. And also know that you don't have to have the best of the best grades to receive a scholarship. So just another, if that helps people feel better, and another kind of side note on that. So as Robin mentioned earlier, student loan debt is crazy. There's a lot of student loan debt that's out there, a little over $1.4 trillion. of US student loan debt right now. I tell you that not to scare you, but to just really make you aware in the importance of why we're having these conversations about, take advantage of all of those things, apply yourself for those grants, those fellowships, those scholarships, so that you don't end up with, $200,000 in student loan debt, because as Robin mentioned, that might be the cost of your program. But if you can offset that with grants, with scholarships, with fellowships, you could definitely take advantage and graduate with the least amount of debt as possible. That's our intention. So at the One Stop Center, yes, we can help you through the financial aid process. It is absolutely not our intention to say only borrow student loans and here's how you do it. Thank you. Have a good day. It's our hope to help you find these other resources and tools so that you're not borrowing the maximum on these student loans. Also, a side note on that huge number of debt, about 40% was used for students in health and graduate professions. You could take a look here at the percentage down here on med and health sciences. Just wanted to point that out again for this specific group. And that average student loan debt is about, or student loan payment, excuse me, is about $350 a month. So that's aside from everything else that you're paying after graduation. So that might be on top of your rent or your mortgage if you want to buy a house, on top of all of your household expenses, a car, kids, everything else. So as much as it seems crazy to be thinking that far in advance, we really want to have these conversations now to take advantage of the free resources, apply yourself so that you're not graduating with this huge amount of debt when you're all done with school. Okay, so how do we make the most of our money now? And just kind of general talking about budgeting and making a plan. It's so incredibly important to build those skills now as an undergrad, to take those forward as a graduate student. And then those are good foundational skills even after you're done with school and juggling all the things I just mentioned, kids, mortgage, all those other things. Absolutely, yes, love it. So building a budget, here are just some kind of general tips. And again, we can talk one-on-one in our office is here to do that if you want some help with actually creating a budget that's specific to you. But just to kind of do a quick overview, you want to budget on your take-home pay, not on basically what your paycheck says before taxes. So what I mean by that is, if you know that you are working this part-time job or this semester you are going to be paid this much money, you don't just go off of your hourly rate or your salary for that year. You absolutely want to look at what you're bringing home actually in your pocket. You want to make sure that you're budgeting in because those taxes, do come out first thing. Factor in all of your expenses, even small ones, and then take a look at prioritizing what's most important to you to see where you can cut back. So everybody's budget, this is the biggest thing that I say on budgeting to all students, is that budgeting is going to be specific to you, and that's okay. It's not something that your budget doesn't have to look like mine, and it absolutely shouldn't, because my priorities may be different than yours. So if it's incredibly important to you to swing by Starbucks every morning, and because you have all the reasons why you want to drink your Starbucks every morning, I'm not going to take that tiny bit of joy away from you. But you may have to cut back in other places to make that Starbucks happen. So if you take a step back and think about, why am I spending the way that I'm spending? You might realize that Starbucks isn't that important and you can make the coffee at home. Or you might realize, you know what, it really is important to me and it makes me feel a certain type of way and that makes me feel happy. And this is the joy that I'm bringing to my day, and that's great. But you may have to cut back in a couple other places. Yes, so the Student Wellness Center does have peer financial coaches, and then at the One Stop Center, we can help with that as well. We just rolled out an option to schedule appointments with One Stoppers, so if that's something you're interested in, you can find us in Starfish as well. So just keeping track of your expenses and just make sure that you stick to that budget. So the way that I like to look at a budget is, it's not a plan for restricting yourself. It's just a plan for how you're going to spend. So if you look at that, I know budget can kind of be a dirty word. So if you look at that as more of a spending plan, you're making a plan for where all those dollars are going to go each month. And you might shock yourself on how much you're spending in one area or another. You're thinking, why am I spending so much money on going out to eat, or fast food, or whatever it is that's something you really don't care about? When if you shift your mindset just a little bit to do a little bit more meal prep, I know we're all spending a lot more time at home these days. If you're thinking about shifting it just a little bit, can ultimately save you hundreds of dollars a month. And then you can put that money towards something that you really care about. and maybe setting the money aside for something like this where you're planning for, I would love to graduate from my undergrad with a few $1,000s saved that I can, pull money from to get my books every semester in grad school, or to get on a payment plan and not have to borrow loans my first semester of grad school. How awesome would that be? So just thinking about it a little bit can help save a lot of money. There are some apps and websites on where you can do this. Mint is one. Every Dollar is another. There are a lot of other ones out there. I think Truebill is another one. But just keep in mind, those couple have a free option. You can get real fancy if you wanted to pay for one. But hey, if we're talking about saving money, use the free tools that you have. Live within your means. This is one thing we talk a lot about. Live like a student now so that you don't have to later. So cut back now while you're a student, buckle down so you can save that money in the future. Take advantage of student discounts. Lots of places offer those. And like I said, we talked about this a little bit before, but your budget is going to be unique to you and your family and your situation. And that's okay. That's what's important. You prioritize what's most important to you and make your money work that way. Okay, so I want to be cognizant of time. I know we have a few minutes and I did want to open it up for questions if there were any, but just to kind of leave you with some general next steps. Make sure that you are paying attention to application deadlines and meeting those. You don't want to miss out on free money and an opportunity just because you missed the deadline by a day. So definitely watch those, take advantage of that. Staying on track in your undergrad and in graduate school, but especially in undergrad, take only the classes that are required for your degree program. Repeating classes can ultimately make you stick around in your undergrad a little bit longer, spending more money. Sometimes financial aid won't pay if you've taken a class so many times. So just making sure that you're staying on track and just taking what you need for your degree program. And absolutely apply for scholarships, fellowships, grants that are going to go towards your research. Look at those resources, start applying for them now, take a look. And even if it's going to be a little while before you're in graduate school, at least start researching so you know where to find the tools and you know what's out there when that time comes. Definitely take advantage of the resources that are available to you and know that you're not alone in this. Everybody in this group is looking at graduate school. Everybody that's here, staff and faculty, are here to help support you and answer your questions. And know that even if we don't know the answer, I think the speaker right before me, she mentioned this, even if you don't know the answer, we'll get you connected with the right answer. It's okay to be confused and know that that's what we're here to do. Think ahead for graduate school and while you're wrapping up your undergrad to borrow the least amount of student loan debt as possible, and file your FAFSA early. So the FAFSA for next school year, so if you're going to be in school next school year, is already open. It opened October 1st. So for 21-22, as crazy as that sounds, 21-22, that has already opened. So if you haven't already, add that to your to-do list to make sure you get your FAFSA filed. The reason we want to do that early is some funds do run out. So federal work study money and some others are limited to what the university has available. So we definitely want to make sure that you apply early and take advantage of those deadlines so that you don't miss out on any free money. So that was, I know I just threw a lot of information at you and talked really fast, but it is right about 10:30 or so. Here is my contact information. If anybody has questions for me, contact information for our office. But if anybody has any questions, I wanted to open it up. I'll go back in and open up the chat. And I was going to find you guys the link for the Illinois Fellowship.
Yeah, are there any students on the call who have questions about financial literacy, financial wellness, whether that's loans, scholarships, budget, savings, credit? That you can unmute your mic. You don't have to turn your camera on if you don't want to, but if you can, that'd be great. Or you can type the question in the chat.
I know money is funny, so I don't want to make you on the spot. I'm just double checking that I didn't miss anything. I think those were all from Robin.
Yeah, the other thing, we have quite a few professionals on the call too that work with students who are going on to health professional programs, and so I know they do some coaching on financial literacy and wellness. So I wonder if there's something unique about pre-health students that they might want to address. We talk a lot about the application process and the cost of the application process being quite different than students that go to graduate school, because students applying to medical school, for instance, might be spending upwards of $2,000 just to apply because of the cost of the applications and adding schools. And sometimes that's not the same cost as it is for graduate school. So Sue, I saw you turn your camera on. You want to say something about that?
Well, a couple things that hopefully you can hear me, but a couple things that I think people miss or they think about too late is applying for some of the financial assistance programs. So most of the pre-professional health programs have those programs available. So well before the year in advance, come talk with us, because for instance, AAMC for med school, you can apply for the financial assistance program and it's good for 2 years. And you can reapply for multiple times after that. So if that cycle doesn't work out or your timing gets changed because you make some really good, mature decisions along the way in consultation, maybe with us, you can reapply again for the financial assistance program once that money runs out. Some things it can do is it can help you prepare for the MCAT. It can help reduce the rate and pay reduced rates for those supplies. It can help make sure that you actually get some reduced rate for the MCAT. Many schools then in your primary application will acknowledge that, so you'll get a reduced rate for that. And then secondary applications, you can get some reduced rates for that as you go through. And it may influence eventually some financial aid ability eventually for the schools, but it is a good program. And again, that's good for MD. DO programs have their own, dental schools have their own. Veterinary schools have their own also. So those are a lot of programs that we would be happy to talk with students about. And so thinking about that in your sophomore year and having that conversation with us, so you're applying perhaps even before your junior year, and making sure that we're having that conversation early in the process, because none of that money is retroactive. They will not give it back to you if you pay for things up front and then you're found out to be financially eligible later. So doing those things right off the bat.
Those are great to know.
Yeah, and we had a great question in the chat from one of the students in my PD 1000 class, Corinne DeBose, who was asking about how this all connects back to diversity in the healthcare workforce and underrepresentation in the healthcare workforce. And one of the most glaring, I think, examples that I've seen from doing this work for about the past 10 years, and I'm sure others may be able to comment as well, is that students who identify as financially disadvantaged, so maybe they come from lower socioeconomic status backgrounds, are already sort of facing that barrier coming to college and trying to navigate this process. And sometimes they might also identify as first generation college students. So their parents did not graduate college. They may not have that support navigating this culture to find some of these resources that are available, because they didn't have a parent like me who funded her graduate degrees with graduate assistantships, right? They don't have somebody to go to, a mentor, a family member, and maybe a family member who works in the health professions to help navigate this. I've seen some disproportionate numbers too with those students being students of color here at UC, because we are a predominantly white institution. And so the students that I know that I've worked with who've applied for the fee assistance programs for AMCAS to apply to medical school have been students who identify as first generation, financially disadvantaged, and they grew up with maybe food insecurities. Their parents didn't have access to health insurance. And so here they are trying to go to med school to make the difference, and they've already had something stacked against them. So hopefully, Corinne, that answers your question. Just from my own personal experience, I don't know if anyone else has thoughts about that before we close. We have about 3 or 4 minutes left.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Real quick, Robin, and I like that you say that oftentimes first generation students, students who may be at lower income, who may not know the questions to ask, please know that is why we're here for you. You are not expected to know that when you come in. We know this is your first time through. There is no way on God's earth that you should know these types of things, the resources that are available. So please come to us. That's what we're here for, is to help you figure out the pathway. If you're willing to ask the questions, we're willing to spend the time.
Yeah, and one of the things that, I would share too, as someone who feels, privileged and blessed now to have funded my, further education all the way through to the terminal degree with scholarships and sort of break that first generation barrier that I came from. And I know that will look different for my kids now is those of us who have gained that kind of educational privilege or financial privilege, whatever it might be, it's important for us to be able to collaborate, give back, share our knowledge, share our resources so we can lift everyone as we climb, right? So it's not to, point fingers at people who had access or privilege to wealth or education, but to say, let's all serve one another and help lift all of us so that we can truly diversify the health professions.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Sydney. We really appreciate all your valuable expertise and sharing that with us today. We are going to take a break, everyone, and at 11 o'clock, we are going to come back with Patrick Cafferty and a faculty member, new from Mount St. Joe's PA program, to talk about what's it like to be a PA, how can we diversify the profession, and what are some of the admissions requirements for Mount St. Joe's PA program. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.